right. Welcome to StereoPsych. I'm Stephen Downey, a clinical psychologist from Australia. Today we're going to be doing the usual, a breakdown on a Reddit thread, Am I the Asshole? We'll be doing the same thing I sort of normally do, which is read the thing from start to end. And then we'll be going through and kind of looking for what do I sort of focus on when I'm approaching a situation like that. So if you like what I do, like it. If you subscribe if you want to see more like that. If you've got things that you want for me to review, throw them in the comments below, and I'll see if I can do something like this on that. So, all right. The way that we're going to do this is just the first one that looks like something that we haven't done before. All right. So this one here, am I the asshole for going out to eat without my husband and kids because they didn't wash the dishes? This could be different enough. Let's see how we go with it. All right. So, am I the asshole for going out to eat without my husband and kids because they didn't wash the dishes? Both my husband and I work full time. I work real estate and he works at a shipyard. We both collectively work around 60 hours a week. We have 4 kids, 13-year-old twins, a 12-year-old, and an 8-month-old. My husband has every weekend off. I do not. I implemented a chore system from the time my kids were little, but ever since I've had the baby and since the kids were older, all of them have slacked off tremendously, including my husband. I pick our baby up from daycare around 5 p.m. and when I get home, I usually find my husband's on the couch on his phone and the kids in their rooms playing video games, watching makeup tutorials. The house is generally a mess, and honestly, the only issue I have is the dishes. I couldn't give fuck all about anything else because the rest of the house generally isn't dirty, it's just cluttered. But I expressed several times that I'm tired of having to wash all the dishes in order to cook and have lashed out in some not so nice ways, shut off the internet entirely, took the cord with me to work so no one could use the Wi-Fi, watch TV, cancelled family trips, grounding people, got into big arguments with her husband. Things will change for a week to a month and then switch right back to them refusing to help. I'm honestly so tired of it that I don't even have the energy to speak up anymore. As I said, my husband has weekends off, so he and the kids were home yesterday while I worked. Before I took off for the day, I told them, you guys better have your chores completed by the time I get home. They said, yes, ma'am, and I leave. I text the husband around 4:30 asking what they all wanted for dinner because I had to stop off at the grocery store. I pick up what he said they all wanted and walk into my home to find that not a single dish has been washed, and there's at least 10 more dishes in the sink than when I left that morning. I also noted that there's a load of laundry had been washed and was still sitting in the washer and was never switched to the dryer. Husband was on his ass on the couch watching YouTube. Kids off playing video games. Baby in a walker. So I put the groceries on the table, packed a bag for the baby, and told my husband, have at it, I'm going to Applebee's, and left. Maybe 20 minutes later, he called and says, I washed the dishes. Sorry, I was super tired today. I told him that's zero excuse at all. There's 3 older kids who have chores, and he couldn't even step up and tell the kids to complete anything either. It's pure laziness at this point. He said, I know, I'm sorry, I'm trying to work on it. Can you just come home? I don't know how to make this dish. It's a pretty difficult dish, but Google is free. I told him, no, I'm sitting at Applebee's and will be enjoying my steak and shrimp with the baby in peace, and that him and the older kids can fend for themselves because, apology or not, I'm not letting him off the hook here. He had me on speakerphone, so him and the kids laid right into me, asking me to please grab them something from Applebee's. It's all of our favorite restaurant. I said, absolutely not, and hung up the phone. When I returned home, the groceries had been put away, and apparently they had grilled cheese and cereal for dinner. My husband and kids are still pissed at me. I told them this is how it'll be every single time they don't do chores from now on. Am I the asshole? All right. So a few things here. Some things that I have noticed in other ones that are essentially the same here. The first thing that I care about here is I have an 8-month-old baby in the mix. Generally speaking, I think when somebody is looking after a tiny infant, they need more help, not less help. And this particular scenario, I think it's very much complicated by with both parents working. There really isn't any time, and it sounds like she has been very flexible on the house to a large degree. But when it comes to the dishes, that's the pinch point. So, like, specifically, I want this one done, and nobody's listening. And so we drop down here to see a pretty, I would argue, typical escalation of you didn't do the thing, here are the consequences. You didn't do the thing, here are the consequences. We see temporary change and things switching right back. Um, you know, gets to a point where she's just completely done and gets home. So, you know what? I'm not doing it. I'm going to sort my own dinner out, and you guys can sort it out for yourselves. She has provided food. There's no, the kids aren't gonna go hungry. She's aware that her husband has options. He can either cook this thing or he can do other things, but it's his job because he didn't do the other things that would make it easy. I do notice in this situation that she packs up the baby, the 8-month-old, and takes the baby with her to Applebee's, which I think is pretty cool. She's not sort of asking the husband to provide for everybody, which often with a baby in the mix, that's basically 2 meals. And so even in her act of being completely pissed off, there's some kindness in there to go, just you and the older kids, the ones who essentially have the age and nous to be responsible for this, you should be doing it, and therefore that's the people that she puts the consequences on. She does lay the blame on her husband, which I think is probably fair. We'll get to that in a second. About like he couldn't even follow up with the children. That's probably a fair point, you know. So yeah, I look at this and I kind of go, is there an asshole in this situation? Okay. I think a lot of people would say, yes, there's an asshole in this situation. I would argue I'm not convinced there is an asshole in this situation. I think there is and I know that we've sort of dealt with this theme before of a thoughtless husband. There is a somewhat thoughtless husband, but given the concessions that she makes for him, my understanding is that she knows that he is pretty busy. What don't I know in this situation? I would like some clarification around what she means by we both collectively work around 60-hour weeks. I think she means that both her and him do 60-hour weeks, right? And this changes things for me, right? So I would need clarification around it. If they're both doing 30-hour weeks, I'm actually less sympathetic. That actually sounds like sort of closer to part-time work where both of them have the capability to put in more. And I would look at this bloke and sort of go, you are really dropping the ball, right? Now, in the situation where they are both working 60-hour weeks, I look at this and kind of go, okay, you guys need to sit down and have a chat about what are our priorities in life because firstly, 60-hour weeks. So I'm a psychologist. That's the first place my mind goes is this sustainable over time? And the answer is essentially no. You run a household with 4 children in it. Both of you working 60-hour weeks, and this is sort of what I meant by I'd come back to the husband is the asshole thing. Odds are you are both burnt out and we have a little child in the mix, right? Now, this little child is also, there's a big question mark for me around that's a big age difference, 12 years to 8 months. Is this an accidental child? Which, so I know last time I did this, we're looking at it from the perspective of the child, right? But this would have thrown the entire life around. She's had her children, she's done that first set of hard yards and is now in the career building phase. And all of a sudden that's complicated by a child. She's continuing to work 60-hour weeks. Right. So I look at this situation and kind of go, my first thoughts on reading through this is the mental health of both mum and dad is probably either rubbish or on its way to being rubbish. Those are really the only 2 options. These guys work too much. There is not time to effectively parent and run a household around that level of work. And that would be my main focus for something like this. I don't know if 60 hours is an exaggeration or not, but if we think about 60 hours, that is working 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then having 2 days free, right? That's just not a sustainable workload. And by the looks of it, there isn't even the 2 days free. So she actually is on call on the weekends as well. So I look at this kind of situation and go, am I surprised that she appears to be stressed out of her mind and struggling? Absolutely not. I don't really see any alternative. Am I surprised that he does a 60-hour week and sits on a couch? Absolutely not. That's not an asshole thing to do. That's normal, right? The issue for these people, as I see it from the outside looking in, is they are basically buying their future with today's mental health. And it's something that I see very commonly across a huge amount of couples. These days, it's not uncommon for both parents to have to work to be able to make ends meet and that kind of stuff. That's just, I think, the nature of life, particularly at the moment in a cost of living crisis. So that's normal. I get that. But where I start to pull an issue is the sheer volume that they're working. That's crazy and unnecessary. Definitely unnecessary. There has to be ways that you can reorganize your life so that you don't have to pull those kinds of weeks. Otherwise, if you do it, right, your expectations of each other need to be absolute basement level, and you need to be thinking about how, so at this point, my thinking is along the lines of stress, and we need to go, right, well, the solution to stress is problem solving. How do we take as many of your problems away as possible, right? Which is probably going to work against your money collection in this case, because you are going to need to trade some of that present money for solving of present problems. That could be things like nannies, finding like food services that are going to make cooking a lot easier. It could be making sure that maintenance tasks around the home in terms of cleaning and, mowing, general maintenance are taken care of by other people. And in a situation like this, the first thing that comes to my mind is pay a cleaner to come in several times a week and do your damn dishes. It sounds like a pinch point. If you are the husband in this scenario, I would sort of go, here is how to love your wife. Find a cleaner and get them to come in and do your damn dishes, right? I'm not necessarily expecting the husband in this situation to step up. All right, 60-hour weeks are no fun. Been there, done that several times in my life. You are wrung out, Now, people are going to accurately say, but the mother's doing it too, therefore he should step up. That is not my thinking as a psychologist. That is never my thinking. I don't look at somebody else and sort of go, oh, well, her mental health has gone to crap, so his should too. No, that's rubbish. Anytime you find yourself paying your bills with mental health, the cost is too high. Do something else, do anything else. That's a terrible way to do life. So I look at this situation and go, nope, we need a problem-solving approach that is going to be finding out how do we get as much of these responsibilities off these two people. If they want to continue working like this, and it seems like that's what works for them, then that has to happen. I'm not thinking that relationship is particularly bad. He acknowledges what he's done, apologizes, states that he's working on it, and she mentions that he will change his behavior and stuff like that. The relationship is close enough that he asks her to come home, acknowledges his own shortcomings. There's a little bit of vulnerability in that sort of tells me, yeah, this relationship does not strike me as particularly toxic, right? What I would say is if you've tried this multiple times and it keeps falling over, maybe instead of making the assumption of, like she does, that it's pure laziness at this point, I would go towards maybe this is actually beyond us. And the problem is with people like this. So, when I think about this person again, so something that I don't know that I would want to know, I would be wanting to assess this person's level of drivenness and ambition, because unfortunately, when people have that high level of drive and ambition, they tend to assume that everybody else either is like them or should be like them, which again is simply not the case. It is a terrible character trait for mental health, and it usually lends to perfectionism. Now, this person isn't a perfectionist. She's sort of clear about the fact that she can sort of put up with, house being a mess and stuff like that. But people who sort of have that hyper focus and stuff like that, what I find when I work with people like this is they are completely resistant to the idea that they need to change their life or things won't get better. And what I usually tell them is, look, you are staring down the barrel of some serious health issues. Right? So this is, if you want to see the chat that I would have with somebody directly, it would be, right, you need to understand chronic stress is no joke. Your body does all sorts of horrible things to itself to help you to push through chronic stress. And the bottom line is it cannot do it forever. Something usually gives eventually. You are at risk for various heart conditions. If people are obese, I actually raise this and sort of go, you need to take your health into account because you're raising your risk of heart disease, right? But even for people who do not have those health issues, I'm still going to address the fact that we are doing that. My understanding is you're raising your risk of various kinds of cancers as well. Your mental health is obviously at extreme risk, if not already fallen over. And I usually get pragmatic at this point because this is sort of right in my area to sort of go like, you probably are losing your empathy. Do you notice that that there is any change in your ability to have care for other people where you are not paid to do so? Some people, when they're in their professional role, they are still able to sort of manage at least a forced kind of an empathy, but they find that outside of that paid role, it's completely inaccessible. Trying to get pragmatic around this is having an impact. Is this the life that you want for your children? Is this are these the memories that you want to be making for the future because you need to be the person on the other side of this? And are your kids dragging themselves up whilst you essentially are absent in work, right? These are the discussions that I have. And if you wonder, oh, isn't that a bit sort of judgmental and full on? That is the sort of therapy that I do. I don't have any qualms about looking somebody in the eyes and saying, you have to fix your life. These are the consequences if you don't. And you need to understand that by not fixing the consequences, not fixing the problem, you are giving yourself the consequences. And one day you will be potentially coming to see me for the consequences of your own actions. And I'm here at this point saying, I think we can head that off, but this is going to take some pretty decisive action in your life. And I think I have found people to respond in one of two ways. Usually people take it seriously and go, right, I understand the risks. What do I need to do? And that can be a very helpful conversation. Otherwise, people are just like, yeah, I know that, but I just want to be able to cope right now. And I usually tell people, look, I can do that for you, but you need to understand this. When I sort of come across, and this is the analogy that I use just because it's the one that I came up with, and I don't terribly mind it. If I come across a frog in a toxic pond, and what that frog wants me to do is help him to live with the toxins rather than either clean up the pond or move to somewhere that is not toxic, I can help him do that for a period of time. I guarantee he will fall over eventually, and that's just the nature of chronic stress. I mean, a lot of stress is, we believe stress is the cause of a lot of autoimmune conditions, of where essentially my understanding is, so I'm not a doctor, but my understanding is that if you live in chronic stress for too long, your body is constantly prepared for a threat. And so it really boosts the production of your white blood cells. Those white blood cells, I'm going to say it in language I understand, they basically get bored after a long period of time and start looking for anything to attack, and they will attack you. And that is effectively an autoimmune condition where your own immune system begins to recognize and attack parts of your body, such as your thyroid, because we've been overproducing the living heck out of this stuff. And it just increases the likelihood that that sort of a problem will happen. So, these are things that you want to think about in a situation like this. Do I think there's an asshole in the situation? No. What is the pathway forward? These sorts of scenarios, I have seen this many, many times across my career. We are talking a lot. And I think that people in this situation very much underestimate the genuine health risks that are posed by living a life like this. And that would be the only place I would be doing everything in my power to try to help this person to see the risk that they are to themselves in living life this way, and sort of going, you are paying tomorrow's bills with today's mental health, and it's not worth it. So look, I think that roughly covers this one here. I don't usually go to the comments, so we are going to continue that. In case people are wondering why I don't go to the comments, there's a few reasons for that. One is I don't have any interest in getting into arguments with strangers on the internet, and commenting on specific people's comments, I think, is just going to, invite arguments that I'm not particularly interested in having, as well as often the comments are focused on things that I would consider to belong within a really specific treatment domain rather than a general treatment domain. And I'm not sort of going down that pathway. All right, guys, that was actually pretty fun, pretty interesting. And I think that is pretty different to what we've done in the past. So good times had by all. Let's finish up there, and I will catch you for another one. I'm back at work, hopefully tomorrow, pending not being sick. We'll see. Fingers crossed. And knock on wood, all that kind of thing. And I should be able to get another one out tomorrow. So take care, guys, and I shall see you another time. All right, catch us.